The whine of a mitre saw bled through the garage door while I scraped ice off my windshield at 4:03 a.m. The cold bit through my gloves. The glass rasped under the scraper in steady stripes. Light leaked from under the garage door because Elijah had strung 2 orange extension cords through the gap. The cords made a hump under the rubber seal, letting the night air and sawdust out. I tapped the ice off the scraper, watched my breath lift, and tried not to swear before coffee. My name is Angela Henry. I'm 31, I work the early shift in a grocery store bakery, and I own a small ranch with a 1-car garage that I actually need in January. My younger brother, Elijah, 26, friendly, starting out as a handyman, treats my garage like a shop he forgot he doesn't pay for. Our parents, Cecilia and Reuben, are 57 and 59. They love us and hate conflict, and that's how we got here. I shoved the garage door up and a ribbon of sawdust fell at my feet. The hall off the kitchen already smelled like cut pine and hot metal. A clamp clacked on concrete. Elijah wore earmuffs and a grin like we were in a commercial, the kind where everyone's attractive and nobody worries about breakers. "Morning," he shouted like it was a favor he was awake. "It's 4, I said. "I need to get my car inside this week. It's 6 degrees. He flicked off the saw. "I'm almost done ripping these. It's family storage, Ang." He said it like a family slogan. Behind him, a mitre stand, a stack of 2x4s leaned across the wall so the door barely closed, a milk crate of cords. My old padlock was gone from the side door. The hasp hung empty. "Clear a path for the car," I said, "and don't run cords under the door. They're a trip hazard and my heat's walking out the gap." He grinned, dimples and all. "It's temporary. I've got a porch rebuild this week. I just needed to prep." "I don't want to trip," I said, stepping over an extension cord that snaked into my kitchen like a vine. "Please move the cords by tonight." "Noted," he said, which meant nothing. He thumbed his phone, and music thumped tinny from a speaker. He put the earmuffs back on. The saw screamed again. I left the garage door up to vent the dust while I finished scraping. By the time I got the windshield clear and a thin line of defrost biting into the fog, my toes were numb. I drove to work with my coat unzipped so I wouldn't sweat through it on ovens. I clocked in at 4:28, tied on an apron, and loaded the first sheets of frozen croissants while the building hummed awake. It's the part of the day I like. Timers, lists, dough doing what it's supposed to do. By noon, I'd sold out of blueberry muffins and had flour crusted on my fingers like old glue. The sun made the snow brighter, but not warmer. I drove home on salted streets and parked on the street because the driveway was half blocked by his truck. Again. The garage door was down. The cord still ran under it like orange tails. Inside, the cord had lifted the door enough that a stripe of dirty snow had blown in and melted. My whole rug was wet. I took off my boots and almost did a split when the heel slid on a slick, fine layer of sawdust. My hand smacked the wall. My heart kicked once, hard. "Elijah!" I yelled. "Do not run cords under my door." He popped his head out of the garage, sweat on his temples, cheeks pink from the heat of working. "Chill, I'll fix it." "Now," I said. "Later," he said, then softened it with, "Love you, Ang." That night at my parents' place, the kitchen was warm and crowded with good smells, and the TV in the living room muttering pregame. Mom pressed a plate into my hands and kissed my cheek. "Be nice," she said under her breath, like I'd come to fight instead of eat. "He's starting out, honey." I was almost on my back in my own hallway, I said. "Ice plus sawdust is a skating rink." Dad reached for the remote. "Did you see the quarterback's shoulder? That's the real story tonight." He smiled like we were all going to laugh and move on. Elijah rolled a shoulder and spooned mashed potatoes. "I'll move some stuff tomorrow." "Don't be dramatic." Clear a path, no cords under the door, and the door has to close all the way, I said. I kept my voice flat because if I let feeling in, it would flood. I need the garage for my car. That's why I bought a house with one. Mom touched my wrist. He's family. We share. I'm not a storage unit, I said. Dad's eyes slid past me back to the game. Let's eat before it gets cold. I went home early because my alarm would go off at 3:45 again. My feet were cold inside wool socks. I put my lunchbox in the fridge, set out my keys, checked the driveway through the blinds. The orange cords still made that small, stupid hill under the garage door. The next afternoon, the electric bill landed on my doormat with a soft slap. I slid it open at the counter, scanned the totals, and pulled a yellow highlighter from the cup by the microwave. The extra stood out once I circled it. $61.72. I held the bright circle in my hand, felt the weight of it, and left it on the table where I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it. I left the bill on the table overnight like a dare. In the morning, I sat with my coffee and a yellow highlighter and circled the extra $61.72. I pulled a lined pad from the drawer and started a list with a blunt pencil. Power, 61.72. New padlock, old one gone. Heavy-duty trash bags for his offcuts. I underlined ask first without meaning to. I was already behind. The driveway had a skim of ice again, the kind that looks dry until your heel tests it. Elijah's cords still bowed the garage door. I kicked grit over the slick spots, scraped just enough to get a porthole clear on the windshield, and left 2 minutes later than planned. The streets were salt white and the stoplights hung stiff in the cold. I parked crooked in my usual spot and hustled in the back door with my apron in my hand. 4:30 means 4:30, Lisa said, not looking up from the baking schedule. She slid a rack out with her hip and raised an eyebrow. You good? I'm trying, I said. Ice and sawdust. My brother has my garage wired like a Christmas tree. She nodded like she'd heard worse, which in a grocery she probably had. Figure it out. I don't want to write you up over 3 minutes. Also, safety. I need you not falling on your butt before bagels. I know, I said. I'll handle it. Work steadied me. Ovens heat, timers beep, dough proofs. When the rush hit at 7, I had a rhythm. Transfer, score, rotate, smile. By 11, the cases were neat again. I clocked out at 12:06 with flour in my cuticles and a new awareness of how much 61.72 is in muffins. On the way home, I stopped at the hardware store. I stood in front of a wall of locks until I found a brass one with 2 keys and a shackle that fit my side door hasp, $8.49 plus tax. The cashier slid it across the scanner like it weighed nothing. I grabbed a box of contractor bags in the next aisle, black, 3mm, tear-resistant, $6.99. I tucked both receipts in my wallet. Elijah's truck squatted in front of my house when I pulled up, twin grooves of slush carved into the curb. The garage door was mostly down, the bottom kissing the cords and stopping an inch shy of the concrete. The narrow gap breathed cold into the hallway. I could feel it when I opened my front door. He'd added a mitre stand since yesterday, legs flared, saw bolted to it like a small angry animal. 2 fresh stacks of 2x4s leaned longwise against the wall, ends just clear of the track so the door didn't grind. Barely. The side door stood open with a screwdriver jammed where the padlock should have been, holding it shut against the wind like some kind of joke. I installed the new lock right then. The hasp screws were slightly loose. I tightened them with my own driver from the drawer, slid the new lock through, clicked it. The click made me feel better than it should have. I set the second key on a hook by my back door. I pulled on gloves and used 2 of the new bags to corral offcuts and curls. Every time the bag rasped against the concrete, it sounded like money. I swept a path with my push broom from the door to where my car's nose would be if I could get it in. I used my phone to take 3 quick photos, cords under the door, the stacks, the meter on the far wall blinking its steady red heartbeat. He wasn't there in the afternoon. He texted a thumbs up to my "please clear a path tonight," and then nothing. By evening, I was tired the way that sits in your shoulders. I showered, wrapped a towel around my hair, and stood at the counter with my phone open to my list. Under power, I added a separate line: new lock, 8.49, bags, 6.99. It felt petty until I looked at the empty space where my car should be. At 8, the saw started up again. The whole house got that thin vibration you feel more than here. I plugged in my blow dryer and aimed it at the back of my head. Warm air puffed. Welcome, and then everything hiccuped. The dryer coughed. The hallway light blinked out. Somewhere in the garage, the saw choked to a stop. Quiet fell hard like snow off a branch. My chest tightened like a fist. I stood in the dark with water dripping down my neck, towel sliding, and counted to 5. I set the dryer on the counter and felt my way along the wall to the breaker panel in the hall closet. The lever for the back half of the house had snapped to the middle. I flipped it off, then on. The lights came back in a flicker. The saw wound back to life, higher pitched for a second, then settled. "Elijah!" I yelled through the door. "You just tripped the breaker." "What?" he shouted back over the saw. "Stop cutting right now." The saw powered down, a beat, then his voice, easy. "It's fine. I'll be done in 5. "It's not fine," I said, but the hall didn't care what I said. It kept being a hallway. I dried my hair in the bedroom with the door closed and my jaw tight. When I sat on the edge of the bed, I texted him because texting makes your words small and exact. "We need to talk." A bubble appeared, paused, disappeared. Then, a laughing emoji and "love you sis, chill." I didn't answer the laughing emoji. I set my alarm and slept in slices, waking to the remembered choke of the saw and the dark. At 3:45, the phone buzzed me up. The house was cold in the way that makes you breathe carefully. The orange cords still made their little hill under the garage door when I checked the back hall. I drove to work slow and early, the sky a flat lid. Lisa glanced at the clock when I clocked in at 4:27 and didn't say anything, which felt like both grace and a warning. I kept moving. By 7, the ovens had me sweating under my sweatshirt. By 11, I could smell cinnamon on my own sleeves. Routine helps. Lists help. I scratched a fresh line on the one in my pocket during break. Sign. At home, the garage looked the same, only more. The gap at the bottom of the door had let in a broom width of snow that melted into a dirty stripe. Inside smelled like cut pine and hot motors. I wiped my boots and stood in the kitchen for a second, just long enough to take a breath. Then I pulled a piece of white cardstock from the drawer where I keep stamps and wrote in block letters with a fat black marker, "No storage, ask first." I taped it inside the garage on the wall by the door where you can't miss it if you have eyes. I clicked the new lock on the side door just because the sound calms me. Then I took a photo of the sign and one of the cords, again, this time with my watch in frame so the time showed. The meter on the far wall winked red like it had its own pulse. I took the broom to the drive and pushed the wet grit off to the gutter. The top layer looked dry, but wasn't. On my second pass, my heel hit a thin, invisible sheet and went sideways. My knee whacked down on the cold concrete. The sound was small and mean. I caught myself with my hands and sat there like a picture of bad luck, breath gone. "Whoa," a voice said. Reagan from next door, bundled in a gray parka, a scoop shovel in one hand and a milk jug full of something in the other. She stepped off her cleared walk. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, though my knee had that hollow, buzzing hurt that means it will complain later. "I'm fine." She looked past me at the orange cords tunneling under the door. Her eyebrows did a thing, but she didn't comment on it straight off. She lifted the jug. "Salt? I've got plenty. It's the cheap stuff that actually works." "Please," I said. She sprinkled a wet-looking line across the worst stretch. The pellets crackled. "That's a lawsuit waiting to happen," she said, like she was commenting on the weather, eyes flicking to the cords and back to me. "And by lawsuit, I mean your own tailbone." "I know." I kept my voice level. "I told him not to run cords like that. He'll say he's almost done." She nodded, pressed her boot heel into a slick spot until it crunched. "You want me to text you if I see the door propped again?" "That would help," I said. "Thanks." "No problem." She tipped the jug. "Knock if you need another scoop." After she went back to her walk, I stood up slow, testing the knee. It held. I took another photo, this one of the salted stripe, the cords, the silly inch of air under my door that meant my hallway had been an icebox all morning. I ate leftover soup at the counter and pulled my pad over. Power, 61.72. New lock, 8.49. Bags, 6.99. I wrote total and did the math with the calculator on my phone, 77,020, before tax on the hardware, which I added because I pay that too. I stared at the number. It wasn't rent, but it wasn't nothing. It was half a tank of oil. It was a week of groceries if I cooked smart. By late afternoon, the saw fired up again. I went out and checked the sign. It wasn't where I'd put it. He hadn't taken it down, just slid a new stack of 2x4s in front of it, so it read like a fortune cookie peeking from a pile, like a joke. I moved the stack 6 inches to the left and the sign reappeared. I didn't say anything because I would say it wrong. I swept again. I bagged more offcuts with the black contractor bags I'd bought and hauled them to the bin. The bags thumped into the bottom with the sound of a small decision. Inside, I sat at the table and opened our family thread. I typed, "Electric, $61.72. New garage lock, $8.49. Contractor bags, $6.99. Subtotal, $77.20. Then I added, "Paying by the 10th is fine. After that, I'll move everything to a storage unit and transfer it to Elijah. Please ask before using my garage or outlets. 7 days from tonight." I read it twice. I changed please to please. I added the date. I put my phone face down and felt my knee throbbing where it had hit the concrete. The saw kept up its thin whine on the other side of the wall. My thumb hovered over send. I hit send before I could think myself out of it. The message went to our family thread with the photos attached. The cords under the door, the meter blinking, the dirty snow stripe in my hall. Electric, 61.72. New garage lock, 8.49. Contractor bags, 6.99. Total so far, 77.20 plus tax on hardware. Please pay by the 10th. After that, I will move everything to a storage unit and transfer it to Elijah. Going forward, ask before using my garage or outlets. 7 days from tonight, 3 grey dots pulsed, disappeared. Mum called instead. "Honey," Cecilia said, soft like I'd skinned my knee at school, "why are you making a thing out of this?" I put her on speaker and set the phone on the table so my hands could stay still. I read the meter. I almost fell in my own hallway. The garage door can't close. I need the garage for my car. "He's starting out," she said. I could hear a TV in the background, somebody laughing. "It's cold. He doesn't have space anywhere else." "I know it's cold," I said. "It's 6 degrees in my driveway at 4 in the morning. The cords can't go under the door. The breaker can't trip while I'm drying my hair." I wrote what I need in the message. Silence for a breath. "Couldn't you just talk to him, face to face?" "I have," I said. "He tells me he's almost done." "He isn't." Dad picked up on the other line like a relay. "Hey, kiddo," Reuben said, voice bright. "We can talk it out this weekend, yeah?" "We'll figure something fair." "The weekend is after my deadline," I said. "If Elijah wants more time, he can ask me." "Don't be so formal," Dad said, laughing a little. "It's family." "Exactly," I said. "Which is why I'm telling you the plan instead of just doing it." Mom sighed, the worried kind. "Be nice." "I am being nice," I said, and to keep my voice steady, I read the message out loud, each line like I was proofing it for typos. When I finished, I said, "That's it." "Okay," Mom said finally. We'll talk to him." After we hung up, the thread lit. Elijah sent a crying, laughing emoji and, "Invoice? Okay, CFO. Then I'll move some stuff tomorrow. Chill." I didn't answer. I took my list out of the drawer and added a new header, Plan B. Under it, I wrote, storage unit, tape, markers, inventory. I opened my laptop and typed storage units near me. A map threw pins across the screen like a sprinkle shaker. The first one wanted a 3-month minimum. The second offered month to month, 5 out of 10 units for $49 introductory, $59 after, gate hours 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., keypad entry, bring your own lock, admin fee $15, photo ID required, insurance optional. I wrote all of it down. I clicked to a third place across town, cheaper, but the gate closed at 8. I start work at 4:30. I need early. I read a forum post about leaving an inventory inside the unit and labeling everything with painter's tape so no one can argue what belongs to who. I added blue tape and a thick marker to a shopping list. I set a phone reminder labeled Day 8, if unpaid, move to storage for the morning after the 10th. I also set one for each day in between, Day 1, Day 2, so I couldn't pretend time wasn't passing. The house hummed around me. The heater clicked on and pushed back at the cold, creeping through the back hall. The new lock on the side door gleamed a little under the bare bulb in the laundry room. I poured hot water over a tea bag and stood there counting seconds off the cabinets. In the morning, the cords still made their orange hill. I scraped the windshield in the dark, breath suspending in pale clouds, and shoveled 2 small strips where my tires sunk into refrozen ruts. At work, Lisa handed me the schedule without comment, which is how she says she's watching. I kept my head down and my hands moving. Routine helps. On break, I checked the thread. Mum had sent, "He'll get it cleaned up by the weekend, okay?" Followed by a heart. Dad added, "We love you. Don't stress." Elijah dropped a photo of his truck bed loaded with scrap and wrote, "See? Progress." I zoomed in. It was the same scrap I'd already bagged. My black contractor bag sat in the bed like exclamation points. "Everything good?" Lisa asked, nodding at my phone. "Defining good," I said. "Just family stuff." She made a face that said, "Aren't we all?" and slid me a donut hole like a communion. By noon, the cold sun did that thing where it looks warm through the windshield and isn't. I pulled up to my house and sat there a second, taking a breath. The garage door was down. The cords were still under it, flattened, and a fresh line of grit had blown in under the gap. I unlocked the front door and felt the hall chill slap my ankles. In the garage, my sign had migrated again, tucked behind a new, taller stack of 2x4s, like a timid kid behind a parent's leg. The miter stand had been shifted sideways, closer to the outlet that shares with my hairdryer. He'd added clamps. He always has more clamps. I took photos, the stacks, the sign, the meter, the cords. I checked my reminders. Day 1. I walked the push broom down the length of the garage and listened to the sound change from scratchy to smooth. On my way back, I noticed it. Another fresh stack of boards leaned near the door, still chalky from the lumberyard, like punctuation at the end of a sentence I didn't write. Day 2 slid by in the usual pattern: scrape, drive, ovens, lists. On my first break, I checked the family thread. No payment. Elijah had dropped a selfie with a dust mask on and the caption "grinding" and 3 arm flex emojis. Mom sent a heart. I turned my phone face down and finished my coffee. After my shift, I drove to the storage place I'd bookmarked. The month-to-month one with early gate hours. The building sat low behind a chain link fence topped with 3 neat rows of barbed wire. A glass door led into a bright office with a bell over it. A man in a navy polo looked up from a computer and smiled like we were about to do something boring together. "Hey there," he said. "I'm Eduardo. What can I do for you?" "Month-to-month unit," I said. 5 by 10 if you've got it. Gate hours said 6 to 9. 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.? Yep, he said. "We've got a 5x10 open in B row. 49 for the first month, 59 after. $15 admin, photo ID," he added, hand out. "We recommend a disc lock. You can bring your own, or I've got them for $11.99. I handed over my license, then my credit card. The forms were straightforward. Month to month. No hazardous materials, no live animals, insurance optional. I initialed a lot of small boxes. Eduardo slid a laminated sheet across with the gate code written in dry erase, 4729Es. He wrote B214 on the top in firm block letters. "You'll want to pull straight down the B lane and swing wide," he said. "Door rolls up like a garage. Bring a lock today?" "I'll take one," I said. "I'd rather not be problem solving at 6 in the morning." He rang me up. $49 plus $15 plus $11.99 plus tax. I tucked the receipt behind the others in my wallet and the spare key for the disc lock into the zip pocket. He circled the gate hours again with his pen, friendly but firm, like a boundary from a stranger. At home, I pulled blue painter's tape and 2 thick markers off the pegboard at the hardware store. I added a clipboard to the pile because clipboards make lists behave. The receipt said $9.58 for tape, $3.49 per marker, $5.99 for the clipboard. I put all of it on the counter with the other receipts and wrote a fresh header on a sheet of printer paper, inventory. Under it, I made boxes for saws, clamps, lumber, 2-4, trim, misc, hardware, hand tools, cords, personal, whatever didn't fit anywhere else. I made a second column labeled photos and a third labeled box bundle. Ty was walking his dog past my place right as I was printing inventory in larger letters at the top. The dog, a moppish mutt with eyebrows, sat to look at me. Ty pushed his knit cap back. "Need help, Ms. Henry?" "Hey, Ty," I said. "You still up for odd jobs? I could use a hand moving some stuff Sunday morning. $20 and pizza." His grin showed up like it always does. "Yes, ma'am, I've got gloves. My mom's cool with me working Sunday." "Gate opens at 6, so let's say 7, I said. "Bring the gloves. I'll have tape." He saluted with the dog's leash. "See you then." Reagan caught me an hour later hauling the blue tape and markers to the garage. She pushed her trash bin to the curb with one boot. "You planning a campaign?" she asked, nodding at my armful. "Something like it," I said. "I reserved a storage unit. I'm labeling everything. Ty's going to help me Sunday morning." She jerked her chin toward her driveway. "If you need a truck, take mine. Keys are on the hook by the pantry. It's a V6, but it'll get it done." "I think I've got it with my car and some trips," I said, "but I appreciate the backup." "It's there," she said. "That cord under your door made me mad on your behalf." "Me too," I said. Day 3. No payment. Elijah texted, "I'll send you something Friday." Mom sent, "Let it breathe." Dad sent a thumbs up emoji. I set another reminder. Friday. Check payment. Day 4. He pushed the miter stand farther into the garage. The sign was visible only if you knew where to look. I took photos and swept again. I added a line to my list. Fuel. Keep receipt. Day 5. My knee complained on stairs. I iced it with a bag of frozen peas while I wrote names on painter's tape. Miter saw, clamps, cord box. It felt ridiculous, labeling items that weren't mine, but I wanted no fights later. Day 6, Friday, no money by noon. I sent one line to the thread. Reminder, deadline is tomorrow. Please pay the $77.20 by end of day. After that, I proceed as stated. Elijah replied with, "I'm on a job all day. I'll swing by later." He didn't. I slept badly, awake at 2 and 3 and 3:20. When my alarm went off at 3:45, I turned it off and lay there staring at the ceiling, then got up, because lying down doesn't move a single board. Work steadied me. Lisa didn't ask anything and didn't have to. By late afternoon on day 7, the cold had that sharp edge like a clean knife. I turned onto my street and saw it before the house. Elijah's truck angled across my driveway, nose to the street, back bumper kissing the garage. He'd left it in park with the brake lights off, no one inside, like a dare. I rolled past and parked on the street. My first thought was to call him. My second was to not. I walked around the truck and let myself in the front door. The hallway had that thin chill again. I put my keys in the bowl, set my bag on the chair, and pulled out my phone. To the family thread, I typed, "Tomorrow is day 8. I will proceed as stated. Receipts will be provided. Thank you." I hit send and put my phone face down on the counter. The disk lock and gate code sat on top of the clipboard. I wrote B214 on the top of the inventory page and set my coffee maker for 5:15 a.m. Then I stood in the back hall and listened to the house breathe until my shoulders dropped. The truck outside ticked as it cooled, little metal sounds like a clock counting down. I woke before the alarm, made coffee in a travel mug, and checked the window. Sometime after midnight, Elijah had moved his truck. The driveway was open, a dark drip on the concrete like a period. I unlocked the side door, peeled back the new lock, and rolled the garage door up. Cold air and the smell of pine hit me at once. I set the clipboard on the workbench, laid out the blue tape and marker, and started unplugging. Each cord came out with a little snap, a small reclaiming. At 6:58, Ty trotted up the drive in a knit cap and work gloves, eyebrows fogging in the air. "Morning," he said, grinning. "Where you want me?" "Photos first," I said, handing him my phone. "Wide shots, then close-ups. Get the meter in 1. Then we label everything before it moves." He nodded like a foreman and snapped away while I tore strips of tape and wrote clear names. Miter saw, miter stand, clamps, bin, cords, cordless drill, plus charger, hardware, misguy. Lumber, Took 4 bundle A. Lumber, Took 4 bundle B, trim, offcuts, trash. I stuck the labels on where they'd show in photos. Ty took a second set of pictures with the labels on. Then we lifted. The miter saw was the beast. We tipped it backward off the stand together and shuffled it to the edge. "Truck?" Ty asked. "Car for this one," I said. "We'll pad it with towels and drive slow." A horn chirped. Reagan pulled up at the curb in her pickup, window down, knit hat low. "Brought tie-downs," she said, holding up 2 ratchet straps. Didn't feel like pretending I wasn't nosy. "You're a lifesaver," I said. "If you'll take the lumber and the stand, we'll do the smaller stuff in my trunk." "Copy that," she said, hopping out. She tossed a moving blanket over the tailgate like she'd done this before. We slid the bundled 2x4s in, ends even, then the stand. She ratcheted the straps until the load sang a little. Ty whistled. 2 trips for my car. First with the saw, clamps, and the cord bin. Second with boxes of hardware, the drill, and the coiled orange cords wound and secured with tape. Reagan took the lumber in one shot. We left the offcuts bagged for the last run to my curb. Between each load, I swept a lane so we didn't skid. The sun didn't warm anything, but it made the dust float like glitter. At the storage place, I punched 142991 at the gate. It buzzed and slid. We pulled into B row, Unit 214 stamped in black on the door. The metal rolled up with a clatter. Cold concrete, corrugated metal, the echo changing the minute we spoke. We put the saw on the left, near the back. The stand leaned beside it, labeled. Clamps stacked by size on a shelf ridge. Hardware boxes in a neat row. Cords coiled and tucked into a crate. Lumber stacked on the right, stickers between layers so it wouldn't warp, because I couldn't help myself. I checked each label, took a photo of every section, and marked photo in the column on my inventory sheet. Ty watched me fill in box bundle numbers and added the number to the blue tape with the marker. Reagan eyed the layout. "You missed your calling," she said. "Lists are cheaper than fights," I said. The words came out easier than I expected. When the last bundle slid in, I pulled the disc lock from my pocket. The lock clicked into place with a solid, satisfying sound. I wrote B214 and gate, 4729 rain on a sticky note and attached it to the top of the inventory sheet on my clipboard. The second key went into a small envelope with Elijah on the front in my neatest handwriting. We made one extra stop at the gas station. I topped off the tank and tucked the receipt behind the others in my wallet. Back at my place, Ty and I hauled the offcuts to the curb and swept until the floor changed from gritty to clean. Reagan backed her truck into her driveway and leaned on the horn once, a friendly goodbye. At 11:47, the garage echoed. The broom and the snow shovel leaned by the door like punctuation marks. I walked the length of the space and pictured my car, nose in, no cords, no stacks. Ty wiped his hands on his jeans and looked at me. "Pizza? Deal," I said. I handed him a 20 and we split a pepperoni from the place on the corner, steam fogging the kitchen window. He ate 2 slices and gave the dog a crust through the fence on his way home. I locked the side door, hung the spare storage key on the hook by my back door so I wouldn't forget it, and sat at the table. I took photos of every receipt with my phone. Electric bill with the $61.72 circled. Hardware store for the $8.49 lock and $6.99 bags. The tape and markers and clipboard. The storage office receipt with paid through 30th printed small. The gas. I laid the originals flat, printed copies on my old inkjet, and paper-clipped them together behind the inventory. Sunday dinner was in 3 hours. I slid the clipboard, the envelope with the key, the printed photos, and the receipts into a larger manila envelope and wrote his name on the front again, steady. Then I stood in the garage doorway one more time and listened to the quiet. The echo was clean. The space felt like mine. Mom had the table set when I got there, roast chicken and potatoes fogging the windows. The TV in the living room murmured about a pre-game injury. Elijah's seat was the same as always, one in from Dad. I slid a manila envelope next to his fork and sat down opposite. "What's that?" Dad asked, light. "Elijah's," I said. He came in 2 minutes later, stamp of cold on his cheeks, hat stuffed in his back pocket. His eyes flicked to the envelope and then to me. Mom handed him a plate. "Wash your hands," she said automatically. He did, came back, sat, and pulled the envelope close with one finger. I kept my voice even. Unit address and number, gate code, inventory, key, and receipts. "It's paid through the 30th. On the 1st, it's in your name." The room held still for a second. The only noise was the knife on the cutting board as Mom sawed an end off the bread. Dad tried a smile. "You two could run a small country, maybe a very tidy one." Nobody laughed. Elijah slid the flap open. He pulled out the clipboard copy of the inventory and the printed photos, one by one, brow tightening. He thumbed the sticky note I'd attached with B214 and gate 47299 written clear. He didn't look at the pictures long, just enough to see that everything had a label. The disc lock key sat in a small white envelope with his name on it. He set it by his plate and kept flipping. Mom's voice was careful. "Angela, honey, was this necessary?" "I asked," I said. "I gave a week. The door wouldn't close, the breaker tripped. I almost fell. It's all there." I tapped the receipts. Hardware store, storage office, tape and markers, clipboard, gas, the electric with the 6172 circled. "It's paid through the 30th. On the 1st, the unit goes in his name." Elijah's jaw worked. "You moved my stuff," he said, not a question. "I did what I said I would do," I said. Everything's labeled. There's an inventory. The gate opens at 6. Eduardo knows to expect you to transfer. He glanced up at that. Who? Clerk at the office, I said. He'll ask for your license. Dad reached for the potatoes. Well, he said, cheerful like a flotation device. At least it's organized. Your sister could label the ocean. Mom shot him a look. Reuben. Elijah flipped to the last page and saw the totals paper-clipped there. He held it in his hands a second, then dug in his jacket pocket and brought out a thick envelope, rubber-banded, edges soft from being carried. He set it between us, pulled off the band, and counted under his breath. Bills thwip-thwip on the wood. He stacked them into 2 neat piles, slid both across the table to me. It was more than the 77 2020s. It covered the lock, the tape, the markers, the clipboard, the admin fee, the storage month, the gas. He didn't look at me when he did it. Got it, he said. I didn't touch the money right away. I checked the top receipt with the $61.72 highlighted, then the storage line with $49.15. I put the piles back into the envelope and tucked it under my hand. Thank you, I said. Mom exhaled. We're eating, she announced to the air, like rescuing a party. She passed the chicken. Dad poured tea like we were all fine. Elijah picked up his fork, then set it down and pinched the bridge of his nose. When he spoke, his voice was tight. You could have just asked me for a couple days. I did, I said, and then 7 days. I kept my tone even because it's the only way this works. I need the garage for my car. You can use the unit. He nodded once, short. He slid the small white key envelope off the table into his pocket, like it burned. He kept the gate code, sticky note, and folded it into his wallet. Dad tried again. So hey, how about that quarterback's shoulder? Think he's playing through? Nobody answered fast enough for him to get momentum, so the TV filled the silence from the next room. Mom passed me the carrots. Her hand shook a little. Next time, just tell us before it gets so big, she said. I did, I said, not unkind. I sent the message. I called. I'm not fighting. I'm just done tripping over cords. Elijah jabbed at his potatoes. I'll get it out this week, he said. I'll figure out a shop. Good, I said. If you need the unit longer, pay the fee at the office before the 30th. The number's on the receipt. He nodded, jaw still tight. He didn't look at me. He ate, quick and focused, like the food was a job. We finished in fits, plates clinking, the TV muttering. Mom brought out coffee and cake because that's what she does when there's nothing else to do. Dad made another half joke about me running the HOA and then let it die on its own. When I got up to leave, I slid my chair in and tucked the envelope of cash into my bag. Elijah stood too. He didn't hug me. He patted his pocket where the key was and said, I'll take care of it. Okay, I said. In the entryway, I put on my boots and zipped my coat. The house smelled like chicken and furniture polish. The air felt like a storm had just skirted us. Wind in the distance, quiet here. He had the key, he had the code. I walked out into the cold and waited in the car for a minute before starting it, just to see if anything else would happen. It didn't. The driveway was clear. The night was sharp. I put the car in gear and drove home to a garage that would take me in. Whether the storm passed or circled back, I'd done what I said I would. The next morning, the garage door went up smooth and quiet. My car fit where I'd imagined it, nose to the wall, broom and snow shovel to the side like sentries. The sign hung by the light switch where you couldn't miss it. No storage, ask first. I set my travel mug in the cup holder and pulled out without scraping a single square inch of ice. It felt like cheating. Lisa clocked my time when I slid my card. 4:28, she said. Whatever you did at home, keep doing it. I cleaned my garage, I said. which was true and not the whole story. On my break, I deposited Elijah's cash at the bank and scheduled the electric payment on my phone. The $61.72 circle felt lighter in my head. When I got home, I texted a photo of the receipt to the family thread with a short thanks. Elijah didn't respond. Mum sent a heart. By Tuesday, the rhythm had settled. I pulled in after work, hit the button, and watched the door seal tight to the concrete. No orange cords, no drift of grit on the hall rug. I hung my keys on the hook and stood there a second, hearing the silence. Wednesday afternoon, Elijah texted, "Can I drop 2 sawhorses for like 24 HRs?" I typed back, "Ask first." "What time? Where?" He wrote, "Tonight 7, just inside the door." Then he paused, the 3 dots blinking. Another text popped up. "Actually, never mind, I'll use the unit." The X. A minute later, a photo. B2 Womteen door open. Our blue tape labels in the frame. A pair of sawhorses leaned against the wall. I saw the disc lock hanging from the hasp. He followed with a screenshot from the storage office, his name on a form and a small charge for insurance. "Transferred to me," he wrote. I replied, "Got it. Thank you." That night, Reagan was taking her trash bin in when I pulled into my driveway. She looked at the clean concrete, the closed seal at the bottom of the door, and lifted 2 thumbs, mittened. "It looks good," she called. "It feels good," I said. Thursday, Mom called in the afternoon. "Could I leave 3 boxes overnight?" Her voice had that careful tone. "Old photos. I'm reorganizing the hall closet." "Yes," I said. "Drop off at 4? Pick up by 10 tomorrow?" "Oh," she said, surprised and relieved all at once. "I'll be there before 10. I'll bring cookies." She arrived early as promised, taping the lids with a tape gun she produced from a tote bag like a magician. She stacked the boxes on the inside wall where they'd be out of the way and not in the damp if any came under the door, though it doesn't anymore. She looked at the sign and then at me. "Ask first," she read. "That's fair." "Pick up at 10, I said lightly. "Pick up at 9:30, she said, smiling, and did. She pressed a Tupperware of cookies into my hands and tucked the tape gun under her arm like a prize. Friday. I didn't think about the garage, which was the point. I thought about pretzels and baguettes and the way people forget to say please until you hand them something warm. Lisa leaned on the counter at 11 and said, "You're less jumpy this week." I said, "I slept," and she nodded like that answer had muscle to it. On Saturday, Ty waved from his driveway. "Garage looks huge," he said. His dog sat and looked dignified. "You still need anything moved?" "I'm good," I said. "Rain check in the spring for yard stuff?" "Always," he said, and the dog sneezed like a yes. Sunday, dinner was normal. Mom set out pasta. Dad told a story about a guy at the hardware store who tried to return a toilet seat without a receipt. Elijah was late by 5 minutes and came in with paint on his sleeve. He didn't look at me like anything hung between us. Between bites, he said to the table, "I got the unit sorted. I'll keep it a couple months while I finish this porch and the basement demo I picked up." He glanced at me. "Gate code's easy." It was as close to thanks as I think he can do. "That's good," Mom said, bright. "More chicken?" Dad lifted his glass. "To labeled oceans," he said. And this time we laughed a little, because it wasn't a joke at my expense, just the shape of how we are. When I left, the night was cold enough to make my teeth ache. I drove home and hit the button for the door. The light blinked on in the garage and the space picked me up like a hand. I parked, got out, and checked the sign on the way into the house. "No storage, ask first." The handle on the door felt solid when I turned it. I locked it and heard the bolt seat. A week can change the edge of things. My car lives inside. The breaker hasn't hiccuped once. Reagan doesn't have to glare at orange cords on my behalf. Ty yells hello from the sidewalk, and I don't think about tripping on my own threshold. Mom asked before she stacked her boxes and picked them up on time, cookies included. Dad still dodges with a joke, but he knows where my lines are. Elijah texts first, sometimes twice, and sometimes deletes the ask because he remembers he has a unit. Nobody turned into a different person. The weather stayed the same. What shifted was smaller and more useful. I wrote what I needed, did what I said, and left the path clear for everyone else to step up. When I lock up at night, I don't listen for a saw. I listen for the click of the latch and feel the quiet sit down in my house like it belongs there. Ask first is the new normal, and that's enough.